Here's to hoping we get lucky. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we're going to talk about a very obscure Gibson model called the Vegas series. They were done for the 2006 model year, so that puts them smack dab at the start of when Gibson starts to get really innovative. Yeah, we've got the robot guitars coming on the way, but we still had Guitar of the Week, Guitar of the Month, Les Paul Goddess, and Vixen series, the GT. They were having all kinds of fun, but they might have had a little bit too much fun with these two models. Because as you'll see, this thing influenced some later models, and it's just really strange and quirky. This is the Vegas High Roller. So you might at first think, yeah, that kind of looks like a 335 in a roundabout way, but it's got gold hardware, rather simplified control layout. It still has beautiful F-holes with a nice flame top. But then you look at your fretboard and it's all ebony, and you got pearl block inlays, a non-reverse Firebird headstock. But now as I take it out of the case, you're going to notice it's actually kind of a small guitar, and it's a flat top. It is not constructed like a normal 335. And in fact, the back finish is satin on these. It is not a high gloss like we saw on the top. So it's like a highly modernized, beautiful, interesting beast. So just for fun, side by side with a real ES335, you can see this thing's just massive in comparison. We'll get some detailed dimensions on the workbench, but the main thing I want you to see here is the construction differences. This is very similar to the Gibson Midtown series. But something important to remember is this predates the Midtown. So these were 2006-ish. The Midtowns were first birthed in the year 2011, but they have the flat maple tops to them with the flat mahogany backs. So they're just chambered mahogany bodies with maple tops on them. So it's not a traditional pressed top, back, and sides that they fish the electronics through your bridge pickup cavity and utilize the F-holes a little bit too. So think Midtown series with these Vegas series guitars, and you kind of get a vague idea of what you're doing here, except for they're a little bit more shrunken down and they're slightly offset as far as the horns go. But if you've tried a Midtown guitar and you didn't like it, don't hold that against these, because these usually are pretty light in weight and they feel better in my opinion. The only downside to these is they were produced in the era where fret nib gaps are very common. That's when the binding separates just enough that there's a little gap that your string can get caught in. This example is not bad at all. And a lot of these tend to have a little bump where the fretboard shrinks and the neck stands proud. This example, again, honestly one of the better ones I've had. But there were actually two different models within the Vegas series. There was the High Roller, which is the one that we're reviewing today, and then there was the Vegas Standard. However, this is one of those times where the big fancy version is not necessarily better. Let's learn the difference between the Vegas series models. The High Roller was $1,499 brand new. It featured Burstbucker Pro pickups. It had multiply binding running around the body, the pearl block inlays as we've discussed, the gold hardware, the really fancy AAA flame tops, and the F-holes. And they were offered in 4 different finishes. The one we're documenting today, Felt Green, Roulette Red, which is basically a red burst with a black border around it, and then you get Desert Sunset, which appears to be a slightly lighter shade of red, but without the border, and then one called Neon. That's the really cool purple one. When you move over to the Standard, they weren't that much cheaper. They were $1,430 brand new. Those things featured Trini Lopez diamond holes, the split diamond inlays along the fretboard, and they had a completely different pickup set, the 57 Classics. They were also offered in more finishes, such as Cherry, Wine Red, Ebony, Vintage Sunburst, Natural, and then my favorite has to be the Tobacco Sunburst, because it's the only one out of all the Vegas series that got a teardrop shape burst instead of a perimeter burst. If you look at it, it technically is also a perimeter burst, but it looks like the traditional teardrop. So the big difference really just comes down to having a flashier finish and a AAA top. That's not to say that the Standards won't occasionally have some figuring within them, it's just it won't be as nice across the board. I've always felt like these kind of got the short end of the stick just having regular custom block inlays. Yeah, it's cool to have on a Gibson USA, and it's about 5 years before the Richlight stuff happens, so we can still have ebony fretboards on everything. But one of the prototypes actually featured Super 400 inlays, which I feel is a big missed opportunity, but it's probably easier just to slap custom blocks on here. You can tell that they probably thought this was the next big thing. In fact, if you use the Wayback Machine to look at Gibson's old website, it had its own little category next to all the other big models. But I don't think they sold that well, so that's why they were only in production for approximately a year. They were done for the 2006 model year. You might find some prototypes in 05, and you will find some 2007 serial numbers. Majority will be from 2006. Now, how many of these were made? Unfortunately, there's no official number. The original marketing materials called it cooler than a royal flush, cooler than $1 million, and hotter than a showgirl. I don't think you could use that same marketing strategy here in 2023. As far as case candy that I have with this one, it's just your usual pre-packed checklist. This is their model number, Vegas Series High Roller Felt Green. Then our usual warranty pamphlet of this era, as well as an owner's manual and truss rod tool. And I'm not sure if this actually came stock with these or not, but somebody has a Vegas $1 million chip in here. It says High Roller on it, but no Gibson, so I don't think it's actually official case candy, but kind of cool nonetheless. So to learn more about this High Roller, let's go ahead and roll it on the workbench to see if we get lucky. Inside the baby Trini, let's see this for the first time. I've documented these in the past, but it was before I did workbench segments. So, does this match the spec sheet? Yep, a Fanseri wound Birchbucker number 1. And in the bridge, a Fanseri number 2. And as far as our construction, looks like we're rocking a long neck tenon, with not too much special going on with our bridge pickup cavity. The pickups read 8.18 in the bridge, middle just for fun, 4, and the neck, 7.62. As far as our hardware, it's a regular Nashville style bridge. It has the PW branding over here, and a full weight, full line tailpiece. The gold hardware was very crusty looking, so I cleaned it up as best as I could. It definitely has a light patina to it though. I had purchased this one from a collector. I bought 2 guitars from him that day, and I had initially purchased one of my blue custom shop double cut models that are hard to find from him. I was hoping this one would be clean enough for my collection, but unfortunately there's a couple of nasty dings up here. That's the worst thing about this, but man, does it have to be on the top. So I don't know what the fate of this one will be. I might just keep it around until I find a slightly better one. If you catch it in the light just right, you can see a white line. Usually what that can mean is there's a light touch-up, or some bug spray or sunscreen has reacted to the finish. And due to it being in this area, that's probably the case. But thankfully, after polishing it, it's definitely nowhere near as apparent as it was, but that's what I'm talking about right there. If there's ever a line on your guitar, or like a whole spot that gets affected, usually it's because somebody had a lotion or something on their arm that reacted with the nitro if you can't clean it off. Here's another area where you can see one of those lines and an impression. But we also have a lot of scratches in this area. And we'll see some impressions here on the side in a minute, but for the most part, this side of the guitar is fairly clean. There's a ding right up here. But check this out, 3-ply binding on the high rollers. I just love that. You don't see it very often on Gibson electric guitars. They use it more often on their semi-hollows and acoustics. But moving on from our mahogany body, we've got the mahogany neck and the ebony fretboard, and I wanted to test something. A long time ago, I had a guitar with gold frets, and when I polished them, I could have swore that it was just a gold plating that could be removed. But I've since had viewers politely correct me saying, nah, that can't be possible. The whole material has the gold color, so I decided to test it. And this is what I saw. So this is just a regular steel wool, you still see the gold, but this is using an actual metal polish. That looks like the gold's gone, right? But no, it's actually not. It just depends on your lighting. But when you give them a mirror-like shine, they do almost look like they're silver again, but it's just because the gold is so heavily reflective. So I can finally stop being scared of gold frets, saying that they look rusty, because you could polish them up to a complete shine, but I kind of like being able to see the gold, so I'm just going to leave the rest of the frets as is, but it was a good experiment. But we've got real mother of pearl block inlays. Got a 12-inch fretboard radius, 24 3/4 inch scale length, with a pretty skinny nut at 1.676, which increases to 2.08 by the 12th. First fret neck depth, 0.85, and that stays pretty slim, 0.918. Here's a look at that at the first fret and the 12th fret. 60 slim taper C shape is the best way to describe this one. Now let's talk a little bit more about this headstock. Earlier I called it a non-reverse Firebird's head. Technically, yes, that is correct. But if you remember, these guitars borrowed a lot of Trini Lopez style elements. So the one most people are familiar with today because of Dave Grohl is his 335 style one. But you can't forget about the big hollow body double cutaway versions as well. It's the slightly more shrunken down non-reverse Firebird, so I think that's why they went with this. These are like just a tribute to Trini Lopez. And high roller versus standard depends how Trini you want it. But our truss rod looks like this and is in great shape. And the cover itself says Gibson. It's rather small, it's flimsy, only 1 ply.
Pearloid tips are very nice. I always thought it'd be cool if they put like dice numbers on them, so like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 type situation. This headstock's not in too bad a shape, but there is a very deep scratch. If you get it in the light just right, it's some sort of like a smiley face. Now thankfully my scratch remover made it a lot less apparent, but it's definitely there and you should know about it. Here's another thing about the headstock. Do you see at the edge right there how it looks like the finish was buffed off of it? That's probably because that's what happened at the factory. As you can see, the finish is a little bit worn on the edge there too. Now it's possible it happened afterwards, but I seem to remember that on the other ones I've owned too. Moving on to the back now, since it was already kind of buffed into a gloss finish, I just decided to lightly clean it, so it brought out some nice sheen, and it gives you a nice dancing effect in the wood. That's some nice mahogany. Got lots of figuring over here. This also looks factory to me. There's like a finish blotch right here. I'm surprised with how much this one was played. It's not too badly chewed up by buckle rash or anything. You just get a little bit right here in this area, and when you have a satin finish, it becomes way easier for things like that to happen. But you've got 2 Explorer style routes back here with our Gibson branded pots underneath all the wiring. And then here you can see what the toggle switch looks like. You'll also notice that that screw hole was sunk basically into nothing. Something to note about the back plates though is they are a slightly different size. This one is smaller than this one. These aren't very thick guitars either. They're very similar to an SG without the contours on the edge, a little over 1.5 inches. Got a golden output jack plate with our strap buttons in the usual locations. But as I was saying, buckle marks are very prone on these due to the finish style, and you can see somebody's like jean rivets or something has really impressed up the side over here. Now the bass side that you see while playing, for the most part, it's not in too bad a shape. Now moving up the back of the neck, just some very minor marks, nothing too crazy. Another one right there. Beautiful mahogany wood grain on a semi-gloss now because it's a satin finish that's been worked up. It's a one-piece neck. Don't worry, that's just wood grain lines, not a break, crack, or repair. But you do have a small chunk of a wing right here, and then a very tiny one over there. And in fact, now that I look at it, this whole wing section is pretty much cut even to where that is, with just a little bit extra. As you can see, some remnants of it there too. This one dates to the 222nd day of 2006, initial batch, production number 305. There's a strange rattling sound in this guitar. It sounds like a solder blob, but I've got the back plate off. It has the F-holes that it could technically go through. I mean, we know what the chambers look like, so having that one open would be fine, but nothing's falling out, and it almost sounds like it's inside the guitar. So hear me out, there might be another small chambered section right here that's underneath the maple top that you can't have access to, and it has something trapped in it. It's either that or it's just really hidden in there, but I've worked on this a good 20 minutes. I can't find anything in the exposed cavities. Well, let's see it for ourselves. Inside the bass side F-hole, we've just got a actually shockingly small chamber right here. I was thinking this might continue up to where that toggle switch plate is, but it does not. And then this is looking down towards the strap button. Do the chambers connect? They do not. So essentially what we found here is it's just routed just enough for this F-hole. But now let's take a look at the treble side. Here we can see the output jack and our controls, but this cavity is also just as small as the other one, with the exception of, towards the end of it, you have access to the center of the guitar, and that's where they put the pickup wires through, and that's also where it continues on to eventually get to our toggle switch. So to recap, small route right here just for the F-hole. Small route right here just for our controls and F-hole. Then you've got the continuation of this route that goes up through into here. So here, and there. So honestly, to say it's like the Midtown series isn't exactly correct, but it does get you into the mindset of it's just a chambered out mahogany body instead of how they actually advertised it as a semi-hollow construction. Now let's do this blacklight test to see what's going on with this finish. So what this looks like to me is somebody has extremely corrosive sweat and it actually reacted to the finish. Because if you look at the finish in regular lighting, you see a little bit in this area too, and that would explain why the gold hardware was all matted over like that. But as far as touch-ups or anything, no, I'm not seeing any evidence of that necessarily. But it's got a nice glow to it. Headstock's also looking nice. And the back has a heavy sweat spot right there, where it rests right up against them, and then, Ah, okay. You know what this is? Somebody put one of those back protectors on the guitar. So that makes a lot of sense now as to why this one didn't get all gouged up on the back and why we only saw it in a few areas, because it was covered by a saver. Although, you can make the argument the saver did more damage, if you're looking under UV anyway. More sweat absorption there. And the neck is looking nice and even on here. Maybe just a little bit of clear coat wear. No breaks, cracks, or repairs. So that was exciting. It shows you what a blacklight test is really for. All said and done, it's an impressive 5 pounds, 14.7 ounces, so just a hair under 6. That's not too uncommon for these. So let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. You guys, but I think this thing sounds great. It's so comfortable. It's lightweight. It's still nice and fancy. It's not too neck heavy. This is one of the best Vegas ones I've had. Mainly because it doesn't have the annoying neck shrinkage thing situation going on, but these pickups sound great. Let's get some dirt on. Are very dynamic too. Now that we know all about this particular Vegas high roller, what are my final thoughts? definitely enjoyed this one. It has a very nice tone. It's a super dynamic pickup set. It pairs well with everything. Lightweight. It looks fancy. I mean, can you imagine Gibson having something like this in their arsenal for $1,500 brand new today? No, that's not necessarily fair. I mean, you have to adjust it for inflation as to what it would be. But I still think the adjusted for number would still be attractive for such a unique model. These things didn't get enough love, in my opinion, and they still don't. Most people don't realize that they even exist. But if you see one of these, definitely give it a try. Some are better than others, but they're definitely unique and beautiful instruments. So, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoy your newfound information on the Vegas series. We'll catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.
If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.